Start that again. Narayanam namaskritam naram jeva narottamam devim sarasatim vyasam tado jayadirat. Nishtapareshu bhadresu nityam bhagavata sevya bhagavatiyotamashuki bhaktir bhavati naistiki. Nigamalka paduragaritam param shukamakaram ritajavi samritam pibata bhagatam rashamaryo mahorohoro shikububi vakaham. Krishna swadam apagate dhammagini karonashta dushamisha paranako dunodidam. Twamapiyad abhishuddha vishuddham vibhum samapiyadena vidam viduktaram prakyahiduho maharadam sankleshanivadam usanti nanyataham. Atmanam ishtamunaya nagrantiya pirurkun kurbanti haiduya itamudiganahari. Anojam pashamam shakshad bhakti yugam and lokashtitana chakra satpada samitam. Om Agarati Maranda Sangana Sadakya Chaksurun Miritam Yana Tashmai Sri Gurave Namah Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Sa Paradikam Vandeham Sri Guru Siyata Parakamaram Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sta Sri Rupam Sagadatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Stam Sadevam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parejana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Sham Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutare Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamai Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesa Sunivari Praskita Desana Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Good morning Divya Joshi. Good morning Jean. And there are 5 other people online. I don't know who you are until you comment. But feel free to comment, just even if it's only just a Hare Krishna, or hit one of those little hearts or emojis. Make me happy, make my day, make my week. Last night we had the Sunday feast, and there were tons of BYU students that showed up. I don't think they're in school yet. No, maybe summer session, but I don't think the big fall session has started. Nevertheless, we had at least 20, 25 students. Some of them might have been from Utah Valley University, but they got the impression they were BYU-ites. And after we announced the feast, and most of the people went downstairs, I was talking with Jai Krishna and Vaida, and a contingency of, I think it was 5 guys and 1 girl came back upstairs. I guess it was a long line for the prasadam. So they decided rather than wait in line, they'd come back, and they started reading our panels, which we have up in the temple room, about chanting. There were references to the Vedas, Prabhupada's quotes, pictures of George Harrison chanting with the devotees, and also biblical references. Also, most of which are from Psalms, which are written, as you know, by David. So I looked across the room and I saw these young people reading the exhibits, and I thought my time would be better spent. I could always talk to Jai Krishna and Advaita. We've talked so many times. We've seen so many times, see each other for so much time and so often. So I went across the room and I said, "You guys have any questions?" Well, remember this was the 1-hour program from 5 to 6 had ended. Everyone was downstairs except for Advaita and Jai Krishna. We were chatting in one corner of the temple room, and these kids turned to me, and the first thing they said, "Yes, we have lots of questions." So more than an hour later, we went downstairs. Most of the guests had already eaten. Half of them had already left. Raleigh and Indu, who managed the prasadam, had taken the trays into the kitchen. So we had to make them plates and bring them back out of the kitchen. And I said, you guys made my day. And Jai Krishna said, "No, you didn't make his day. You made his whole week." And I said, that may be the case. I think it's a record, because we often get students ask questions, but for 5 or 10 minutes. But that was a good, solid hour of questions. And the amazing thing about it is that most of the times when I give an answer based on Bhagavad Dharma, they would go, "Really? Amazing." They were struck by each and every one of the answers. And I think also by the confidence and authoritativeness that we answer. Many times I would quote the Sanskrit original quotes. I think that's something to which people are unaccustomed in Christianity. A lot of the preachers are speculate on a number of items, and they say, I think, or the general opinion seems to be this. And devotees are not ambiguous about anything. We are straight up. in your face in a good way, with the Vedic version, which is very authoritative, very detailed, very specific, and we back it up, of all things, with actual quotes from the scriptures. So we had a wonderful session with these young Mormon kids, very intelligent, great questions, most appreciative, and they were of me and I was of them. And it's never happened before. First time of record, we went downstairs and the feast was done. And I asked one boy, at one point I said, "Are you guys hungry?" And the one boy said, he echoed my sentiments exactly. This is better food. This food for thought, this nourishment for the intellects and the mind and the spirit is more satisfying ultimately than sitting down and shoveling even prasadam in your mouth. And I have to say, I agree. None of us felt the lack of, we didn't feel in any way, what does it say? We wish we would have gone down and eaten prasadam and foregone the philosophical, theological discussion with God as the center. Said no one ever. That kind of thing. What did you think, Rob? You came in a little late. Did you feel the power, the mood of the crowd? I mean, you came in. There was I think a wreck or something on the. I know it delayed Jai Krishna, but did you feel any special vibes last night when you came in on your way with Kel back home to Salt Lake City? Or you might be occupied with Kel and not be able to answer me at the moment. I don't know. I'll wait 5 ticks, and if you don't answer, I'll just go on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, Rob's got his boy with him, so he's probably otherwise occupied. All right, let's say good morning to Bhai Bobby. Hare Krishna, Pranams, Rakesh, Raghava. All glories to Prabhupada. Please have my obeisances. Brent, who was here Sunday. I don't think Brent's missed a Sunday feast for a number of weeks. And he also comes one day a week to help around the place. He works very hard. We're most appreciative of Brent. Divya Joshi, Hare Krishna, Jean Eskelson, and there are 9 other people also on our Facebook feed. The verse, again, we're revisiting for the 5th time, or perhaps even the 6th time. The 20th verse in the 5th chapter, the 1st canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, honestly, every verse you could spend weeks on. But we try and restrain ourselves. I think our record is 9. Idami Vishvam Bhagavani Vetaro Yato Jagatstana Nirodhishambhavaha Tadi Shayam Veda Bhavam Statapite Pradesha Maturam Bhavata Pradarshitam. The Supreme Lord, Personality of God, is Himself, the cosmos, and still He is aloof from it. From Him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated, and in Him it rests, and unto Him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows about this. I, Narada Muni, have given only a synopsis. Right off in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord establishes that both He and the individual Jivatma are the separated parts and parcels of the jiva are both individual persons. He says, Natu ebaham jatu nisham natam nema nachavam nisami sarvayam. He says, Krishna says to Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist. Well, that we take for granted, that God is eternal. Then he goes on to say to Arjuna, nor you, nor all these kings. And we're all eternal, not just God, but we're all eternal. Just like you can't imagine the sun without the sunshine. You can't imagine sunshine without the sun. The sun, as soon as the sun existed, sunshine existed. As soon as the sunshine existed, the sun existed. You can't separate them in your mind. So God's eternal, and we're His parts and parcels. We're eternal. We may not have always been manifest. We may have been dormant, somnambulant within the body of the Lord for eons and eons. But we are eternal, as is Krishna, and we share that qualitative oneness. We spoke several times last week that we're identical, but we're not equal. Just like gold ornaments are identical to the gold mine. They both have the same qualities. They're shiny, luminescent. But they don't. But the gold earring, the gold stud, is not equal in value to the gold that's in the mine. So we're identical, but not equal. So we, as individual living beings, we float our little toy Sputniks in the sky. and we have our satellite communications. But God floats huge planets in the sky. We have creative powers. God has creative powers, but his creative powers are in a whole another mind-blowing scale with us. So it has to be a symptom of ignorance, an indication of an extremely poor fund of knowledge, as Prabhupada says, for anybody to claim to be equal to God. Have you ever heard anybody say, I'm God, you're God? Poor fund of knowledge, folks. Swimming in an ocean of ignorance. God floats planets in the sky. Can you do that? Can you do that? One time in Australia, Prabhupada was giving an evening lecture in the Glebe Temple, and one young boy was visiting for the first time, seemed to be a little bit intoxicated, seemed to have been on something. So he blurted out during the question period that he was God. Prabhupada said, did you create all the planets and all the universes? And the young man said, yes, I created all the planets and all the universes. And Prabhupada said something to the effect that, and you can't even become the Prime Minister of Australia. And he said, yes, I can. Yes, I can. And then Prabhupada said, okay, become. We're all sitting here watching you, waiting for you to put some substance behind your bragging, arrogant words. Prabhupada said, you say you can become the Prime Minister of Australia as a little a proof, a little evidence. You're first claiming to be God, but we're not asking you to be God. We're not asking you to show your universal form, as Krishna did to Arjuna in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada said, just do some little miracle. Just become the Prime Minister of Australia. And he said, we're all sitting here. We're all waiting for you to do that. And of course, his bluff was called. He was unable to transform himself at that moment in time into the Prime Minister of Australia. I remember also I was invited to the Springfield Museum of Art one time for a panel discussion on art and religion. So during the question period, someone asked me about the significance of the peacock. I said, well, the peacock with its indigo chest and comb and beautiful tail feathers could not have been created by random combination of material elements. Peacock could not have been the result of a random explosion, a big bang. So it kind of puts the lie to all the godless explanations of the creation of the universe. In fact, if you say that everything happened by chance, some people have said you're too dumb to breathe. So I didn't know it at the time, but I quickly found out that there was a large contingent of the atheists of Utah in the audience. In Utah Valley, when you speak to an audience, you pretty much presume that they're all God-centered, that they appreciate comments about God. And unfortunately, I got carried away, and not only did I make appreciative comments honoring God, but then I kind of went overboard and made a negative comment about those that don't believe in God. And immediately a spokesman got up and he said, I resent the fact that yada, 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 yada. And he went on and on and on about how he felt offended. Now, he had everyone's attention for a good 5 or 6 minutes while he ranted or raved. But you couldn't help but notice that even though he had everyone's attention, he had a golden opportunity to explain how, for instance, the subject matter of a discussion, the peacock, did in fact come about as a result of a big bang or through a godless theory of creation of society. He had a golden opportunity to contradict me, to defeat me in argument, but all he could do was rant and rave based on his false ego, that he felt offended I hadn't given him proper respect and courtesy, which actually I'll admit I probably didn't, not expecting atheists to be in a Utah Valley crowd. So it is an indication of a poor fund of knowledge to claim to be equal to the Lord. And the definition of God in the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Natasya karanam karanam chabidite, Tat samyas chabarakas traditionally, Parasya Shakti Vivarashute Shabhavakabari. God has multifarious potencies. Excuse me. Millions and millions of universes emanate from him. Earth, air, fire, water, mind, intelligence, false ego. And then aparayamitastuanyam, the unlimited jivas, the unlimited spiritual particles, which have their origin in his body. And that combination of the eightfold material elements and spiritual sparks entering into that manifested universe is what we know as the phenomenal world. So the definition of God is that person than whom no one can be greater or equal. He's distinguished by the diffusion of his multifarious potencies. Now, as potencies, we're not the potent, we're not the energetic source, we're the energies. But as such, we have the same qualities as the Lord. God is full of knowledge, he's full of prowess, and he's active. So we're also essentially full of knowledge. Our nature is chit, knowledge. We're full of ability, and we're also active living beings. We're not meant to lie in bed till 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings. If we do, we'll get sick, we'll get overweight. There'll be so many negative effects. So we are very capable, and especially so if we direct our activities and energies and life force towards our Creator in a God-centered way. We're made not to be independent, not to be supreme, not to falsely and arrogantly and ignorantly claim ourselves to be equal to God. But when we slot into our subordinate position as servants of the Lord, then everything clicks into place. From a qualitative point of view, a God-centered person like Lord Brahma is a devotee of the Lord. Lord Brahma says that after I leave, when I die, when I leave my body, millions of years from now, I hope to resurrect myself as a blade of grass in the spiritual world. Rather than being a lord of a material cosmos, my preferred position would be as a blade of grass serving the Lord in the spiritual world. This is a devotee. Take my life, Lord, and let it be consecrated to thee. Take my moments and my days. Let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for thee. Take my lips and let them sing, always only for my King. Take my mouth and let it be filled with messages from thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect, use every power thou shalt choose. Take my will and make it thine, it shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is thine own, it shall be thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at thy feet, its treasure store. Lord Brahma might have very well made that prayer. Use me, Lord, as an instrument to create one of your millions and millions of universes. And as such, Lord Brahma has 78% of the qualities of Krishna. Shiva has 96%. Vishnu has 98%, but nevertheless, it is never possible to surpass the Lord or to become equal with him. There is no aspect, no manifestation, no avatar, no incarnation of a Lord who can match in personal attractive qualities that Krishna who sports as the son of Mother Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan. There is nothing that can surpass the enchantment of Krishna's childhood activities in Goloka Vrindavan. And therefore, it's not surprising it says, Goloka eva navasati akalatma bhuto, that Krishna, being attractive and fully engaged with his devotees in Vrindavan, never sets foot out of Vrindavan. The Krishna who was at Kurukshetra, the Krishna who was at Dwarka, was a Vishnu expansion. Not exactly the same Krishna who remains always and who never sets a foot outside of Vrindavan. Our job as emanations from the Lord, just like particles of sunshine, which can never be equal to the sun globe, our job is to accept the supremacy of the Lord and agree to render loving service for him. For this purpose we've been created. And this is a very, very felicitous proposal here in Utah Valley, which is, with the exception of the Atheist Society of Utah Valley, for all practical purposes, a very God-loving, God-centered culture. Our wonderful question answer session last night with 6 students who are all Mormons is perfect evidence and indication of that. So this is a perfectly felicitous proposal. We live in a valley which is 90% LDS. That, of course, stands for Latter-day Saints, but we always like to interpret it tongue-in-cheek, loving devotional service. A valley full of potential people who are willing and able to render loving devotional service. In the Bhagavad Gita, 22nd chapter, 13th verse, Krishna points out, like the expert physician diagnoses the problem. What bacteria, what virus is at the heart of all of your symptoms and all of your misery? And here it is in the Bhagavad Gita, 22nd verse, 13th chapter. Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Jay, all the way from London. Glad you guys could stop by just in time for this diagnosis of all of our miseries and troubles in this material world. Purusha prakriti stoti bhunkte prakriti janganam karanam guna sangasya sarasad yoni janmashu. Purusha prakriti. There is Purusha, the Lord, who is singular, and there are prakriti, the created living beings who are plural. Nitya, Nityanam, Chaitanya, Chaitanya. Arasabha Brita, Ekala Ishvara Krishna Arasabha. There's one Supreme Lord. There's one fountainhead from whom all the Vishnus, all the Shivas, all the Brahmas, and all living beings come, and his name is Krishna. He's known as Swayam Bhagavan. The Krishna who killed Kamsa is the original form of the personality of Godhead from which all the other forms come, and he is one. He Advaita Machyutam Anandam. He expands himself unlimitedly, but originally he's one. So that Krishna is singular and he's supreme. Ekala Ish. There's one supreme God. His name is Krishna. Adasabhibrita. Everybody else is servant. Brahma, Shiva, Vishnu, you, me, we're servants. So it behooves us. It behooves us not to pretend or pose ourselves as supreme, as sovereign. And in this lies our original fault. This is the cause of our suffering in this material world. Purusha Prakriti. We are Prakriti. We are subordinate. We are parts. We are servants by constitution. We are not the enjoyers. We are not the creators. We are not the owners. We are not the proprietors. And yet we presume to be so. We falsely present ourselves as enjoyers, as the lords of all we survey. We like to hear our name on people's lips. We like to start our dynasty full of sons and grandsons and great-grandsons. We like to see our name in the newspaper. We like to see a big fat bank balance in the statement that we get from the bank. We like to live in a house which has far more bedrooms than we need. We like to drive a car which turns heads on the sidewalk, which we spend $50,000 more than we had to just for the head-turning sizzle factor. All of this is indicative of our original sin, which is to, instead of serving the Lord, try to become the Lord ourselves. And because of that hubris, because of that mentality, we meet sadasat yona janmashu, because we aspire to lord it over material nature. Therefore, we fix up our bondage to that material nature in 3 different modes, sattva, rajas, and tama, and we associate rather than the spiritual nature as servants. We try to lord it over the material nature as masters. And in that way, we meet with good and evil amongst the various species of life. There's a famous passage in Milton's Paradise Lost where Satan or Lucifer or Beelzebub or whatever he's called in that work is asked by God, would you rather be a servant in heaven or a lord in hell? Without missing a beat, he says, I'd rather be a lord in hell. So that's us. That's us. The one we came here because we made the same choice. Our guru was Satan. Our guru was not God. We wanted to be lords in hell as opposed to servants in heaven. Now, Lord Brahma has got the right priorities. Even though he is the greatest Lord, he is the most powerful, the most respected living entity in this material world, he says, I would rather be a blade of grass in the kingdom of God. If that quote, if that's the mentality of Brahma, the wisest, most powerful person in this material universe, then we would do well to follow in his footsteps, because the alternative is being captivated by, being connected with, being tied at the hip with material nature, and material nature thereby binds us to limitations, to darkness, to ignorance, to temporality. And as long as we're connected with material nature, trying to lord it over material nature, we're going to continue to transmigrate from one body to another in this material world and find ourselves in undesirable circumstances. You know, we have llamas, and I see llamas every day out the window. There are a lot of bugs in dirt. There are a lot of bugs, ticks and parasites. The llamas have no choice. They don't get to go into a house with 4 walls to keep the bugs out. They don't get to insulate themselves. They don't have a buffer between themselves and raw nature. So I see the llamas shaking their heads all the time. They have these big floppy ears. And I imagine that a tick has gotten into the llama's ear, and the tick has attached itself to the inner ear of the llama, and the tick is getting fat and bloated, drinking the blood of the llama, and the llama has an earache, and what can he do about it? He doesn't have any Q-tips. He can't go to the ear, nose, and throat specialists. He just gets out. He's just out there shaking his head 100 times a day. Now, if we're alert and proper caretakers, we'll give him a nice shot of Ivamec, which is anti-parasite, and maybe in due course of time, that parasite will die and leave him alone. But there'll always be something. The llamas are always scratching or rolling or rubbing their head against a tree. We have one llama, she's always had skin problems. I don't know why or how, but you can just imagine she's always itching. There's nothing you can do. If you're an animal, you're right up inside, packed in the stringent laws of material nature. Now, you got here, we came here because we didn't want to serve God. We wanted to be masters, and yet we're buffeted. We're harassed by miseries due to our body and our mind, miseries due to other living entities like ticks and parasites, and miseries due to material nature. When there's a thunderstorm or lightning, the llamas may have a tin roof to get under, but very little is between them and the elements of nature. So it's not desirable, it's not fulfilling to, as an eternal spirit soul, part and parcel of God, sometimes take birth as a demigod, sometimes take birth as a man, sometimes as a beast, sometimes as a bird, sometimes as a worm, sometimes as an aquatic, sometimes as a saintly person, sometimes in a bug. And in all these cases, the living entity thinks himself to be the master of circumstances, and yet to anybody else who's looking at the situation objectively, he's controlled, he's enslaved, he's under the influence of material nature. So our nature is to rise. We may be pushed down, we may fall due to ignorance or having made a wrong choice, but hopefully we will rise, we'll have the buoyancy with the help of the Lord and our God-given intellect to rise above the 3 modes of material nature. Krishna says to Arjuna, Gunamatamatitu tin dehi deha shamudbara janma mito mira vimuktam ritam ashate. If you want to get freedom from transmigration, from wandering throughout the various species of life and throughout the planets, upper, lower, and middle in the universe, if you want to get liberation, then you have to stand away from the 3 modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. It says, Urdvam gajanti shatpisham madhyata shanti raja jagani guna vritashu adho patanti tamasha. If you associate with the mode of ignorance, you go down to the subhuman species of life. In the mode of passion, you take rebirth in the human form. In the mode of goodness, Urdvam gajanti shatpisha, you may go transmigrate to the higher planets. So all the 8,400,000 species of life which we find within each and every universe are governed by these 3 gunas these three modes of material nature, either goodness, passion, and ignorance. And guna is a word which means ropes. So we're bound by the ropes of material nature to take birth, one body, one lifetime after another. Sometimes to be bitten by ticks as a llama, sometimes as a small fish to be consumed by a big fish, sometimes as a bug to be eaten by a bat, sometimes as a mouse to be eaten by a hawk, or a rabbit to be eaten by a eagle, or a deer to be taken by a hunter. I think you'll agree with me that none of these life forms is ideal when we have it within our grasp, our powers to be immortal, and God, our Creator, a loving friend and Father, is offering His assistance to guide us and direct our steps back to home, back to Godhead. But it's not going to happen unless we're situated in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness means to aspire to be a servant of the Lord. As long as we persist in material consciousness, which is to be a master in this far inferior temporal material world, that will continue to oblige us to transfer from one body to another because of our material desires. And you cannot act on your material desires. You cannot fulfill your material desires without getting a material body. Your material body is your instrument on your way to fulfilling material desires. Krishna consciousness means to have spiritual desires. For that purpose, we purify ourselves by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We purify our words, we purify the food that we take into us. And as a result of purified desires, we want more than anything else to serve the Lord. And with that mood of service, then we get in our next life a spiritual, eternal body of bliss and knowledge. That's the instrument that we're awarded as a result of our desire to serve the Lord. As the air carries aromas, the living being carries its various conceptions of life. So it's in our best interest to create or to reawaken or to revive. The original conception is that we're servants, we're subordinated to the Supreme Lord. We can never put aside, put away, throw it in the garbage, this idea that on any way, shape, or form we can ever become equal to the Lord. That is anathema to happiness, to fulfillment, to higher life. On the other hand, if you get yourself with a realized spiritual master, someone who's immersed and absorbed and submerged in devotional service of the Lord, then that person can catch you up. He can pick you up out of the muck of this material nature and train you how to become a perfect, pure, lovely, or aromatic, so to speak, lotus-like servant of the Lord. As it is said, Yata kanchanantam yati kamsam rasha tata ducha duta dvijat bam jayateninam. One takes his first birth as a result of one's material father and mother. Taking first birth is not particularly laudable. There's no particular credit to taking a first birth. In fact, it's indication of a fallen condition for the living being. But if one some or other meets a spiritual guide, a realized person, and then takes second birth, takes initiation from such a person, then one's consciousness can be transferred from the material to the spiritual. And the example is given that due to alchemical process, the base metal, the valueless metal, can be transformed into gold. That's the meaning of this verse. As bell metal turned to gold when mixed with mercury in an alchemical process, so one who is properly trained and initiated by a bona fide spiritual master immediately becomes spiritually surcharged. And what is the main process by which this transformation takes place? It is hearing. It is hearing. The best example of hearing is what? The example that Arjuna set in the Bhagavad Gita after being disabilitated, paralyzed with grief, his weapons dropped to the ground. He was undone, he was unmanned, he was unable to pursue his duty to curb the forces of darkness. But to his credit, in that low, dark, depressing moment when he seemed to be overwhelmed by matter, he was astute enough to put everything before the lotus feet of Krishna. Karpanya dosho pahataha shabhavi chatam yaksreya sishiste mam sarimam tam prapanam. Krishna, it's too much for me. I'm not able to sort it out. You please instruct me. I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. What Arjuna did right there, we can do also to our great benefit, which is to submit ourselves to the hearing process. We have two God-given ears, and we need to use them in order to make our life successful, to wean ourselves of our long-standing, long-cherished desire to dominate material nature, and gradually and proportionally, as we reduce our desire to dominate material nature, come to enjoy spiritual happiness. Every mouthful of food you take, your hunger reduces, isn't it? Nobody has to write you a certificate. Nobody has to give you a plaque or a piece of paper to verify that as you eat, your hunger goes away. You know that, you feel it yourself. So similarly, every step you make, every time you follow the instructions of your spiritual guide, you're going to feel satisfaction. You're going to feel bliss. Raja Vijayarajagam Pavitam Padjaksaveram Susukam Kartamabhyam. It's a process of devotion, of bhakti yoga, of getting yourself in the association of joyful, knowledgeable, luminous devotees of the Lord. Is that process which is joyfully performed. It is a perfection of religion, and that bliss of contact with the Lord can be directly experienced. First thing you have to do is put aside false ego. You have to put aside any concept that you are created or manufactured in order to dominate, in order to rule over. It's not about you. It was never about you. It will never be about you. It will always be about He who created you. In his book, A Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren gives a nice example. Let's say you're hiking, you have a certain destination in mind. You've been walking and walking, and you should have reached there by now, but you haven't. So you're looking for someone coming the other way on the trail to ask, where is, Tibble Creek? So finally someone's coming in and say, where is Tibble Creek? And the person says, you never get to Tibble Creek this way. You're on the wrong trail. You can walk on this trail as much as you want, but Tibble Creek is not. Simple fact is that Tibble Creek is not at the end of this trail. If you want to get to Tibble Creek, you have to turn around, go back to the parking lot, get in your car, drive to this other parking lot where the Tibble Creek trailhead is, and take that trail. There's no way you can adjust there's nothing you can do to get to Tibble Creek on this trail. There's no adjustment you can make. You have to turn around, go back, and go to the right trailhead. So simply, it's not about you, it's about God. And every one of us was created with a purpose. Whenever you have a microphone or a computer keyboard or a desk or a screwdriver, it is created for a certain purpose. So you have to find out what that purpose is. You can't make up a purpose. The microphone can't say, I'd rather be a screwdriver. The screwdriver can't say, I'd rather be a microphone. Why? Because constitutionally, from the get-go, from the original conception, the microphone was created to amplify sound, and the screwdriver was created to screw in and unscrew screws. That's constitutional. That's immutable. That's unchangeable. And so what is the most salient fact about our situation, both the phenomenal, the noumenal, and the spiritual world, is this. As the sages said to the miscreant king Venu in the 20th verse, 14th chapter, the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Tashtim tushtim kim aprapyam jagatim ishvaresham loka sapariyadashmai haratum badam idishaham. The supreme Tashmin tushtim aprapyam jagatim ishvareshara. There is one supreme Ishwar who controls and who created all the Jagat, the material planets, and all the controllers of those planets, including Surya, Indra, Chandra, Vayu, Kavera, and Varuna. And because he is the creator of the planets over which the demigods themselves rule, they worship none other than Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, knowing that as the creator, as the proprietor, as the all-pervasive super soul, when he is satisfied, nothing is impossible to achieve. The demigods, all of them, Varuna, Kuvera, Indra, Chandra, Surya, have all attained their positions by serving, submitting themselves in surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. For this reason, it is said, all the demigods, all the presiding deities of the different planets, as well as the inhabitants of their planets, get great pleasure, get ultimate fulfillment in offering all kinds of paraphernalia for his worship. This is the status quo. May not be so evident on this planet, Earth planet, in this current winter iron season called Kali Yuga, but taken the whole, statistically and proportionally, the thrust of this material world, these planets, and their presiding deities is to overwhelmingly, the consensus is to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because through him all dreams can be accomplished, all desires can be fulfilled. And without him, without coming to the point of submission and joyful surrender at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord of all mystic powers, there cannot be, read my lips, any peace or tranquility in the world. Thus, the original spiritual master, Narada Muni, is instructing his disciple Vyasa, who is no less an influential personality than the compiler of the whole Vedas, to expand this idea of surrender in the pages of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the beautiful story of the absolute truth. Krishna Bhakti Nishkama Taiva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Samali Shakata Shanta. If you want to be peaceful, if you want to be without material desires, if you want to get out from underneath the bondage of the modes of material nature and the tyranny of matter, which forces you to transmigrate throughout all the species of life, there is only really one option, and that is Krishna Bhakti. You look at all those who are engaged in the service of the Lord, one common denominator is they're nishkama. They're not agitated. They're not harassed. They're not haunted. They're not driven by material desires, material name and fame, material sovereignty, material acquisition, because they serve only and always the Lord. They are completely desireless. They and they alone know Shanti. Samna Mitra, Samvaruna, Samna Bhavatyana, Samna Indribhashiti, Samna Vishnu Rukamanya, Mo Brahmane, Namaste Vaya, Tomiva Pratyaksamaritam Varshe, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. All the inhabitants of all the planets, as well as their presiding deities, they achieve peace, tranquility, satisfaction, by serving the Lord. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachate Purnasham Purnamidia Purnamiva Vishishate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. There are 5 verses called the Shanti Panchakam, and each and every one of them asserts that only by surrender and submissive to the Supreme Personality of Godhead can one be without any materialistic desires at all. On the other hand, those who take other paths, the path of bhakti, material enjoyment, and being frustrated with that, ultimately the path of being one with God, or being God, called Mukti. Those who aspire for mystic yogi siddhis, for cheap adulation by the public, they are always and without exception ashanta. They are without peace. So it is in our best interests, it is the advice of all the great saints and sages to transition back to that blissful, spiritual, elevated consciousness in which one is always cognizant of the Supreme Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, than whom no one is greater or equal. Get back into that original position Ainanda tanuja kinkaram patitam mambishame kripatava para pankajati rishtita delishanam. Aspire, pray, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I was created originally as an atom at your lotus feet to render some service. Some or other I forgot you. Some or other I've fallen from the shelter of those lotus feet into this material world, and I'm being buffeted by the waves of material nature, harassed by the threefold miseries. Lord, I give up. I surrender. I want to come back home, back to Godhead. Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hope that was enough motivation for you today. I'm feeling good after my wonderful extended conversation with the young students yesterday at the Sunday feast. Haribo William from Los Angeles. Sue, she doesn't tell us what part of the country she's in. She's been most often recently in Arizona and New Mexico. We don't know where she is now. The mystery lady, Jean, I know you're from Salt Lake City. Raleigh, I know you're from right here in our community in Spanish Fork. Jay, I know you're from London. Gary is from Northern California, Hopland, near where I once bought a piece of property, right there in Mendocino County. Bye Bobby is right on the other side of this wall here. She says, all paid. Bye Bobby's always cryptic. You never quite understand what she's saying. She says, all paid, full obeisances. Sounds good. Sounds good. It has a nice feel to it. The specifics, I can't exactly, but sounds good. Thank you, Bye Bobby, my eternal companion of more than 50 years. Without whom we wouldn't have gotten to the point where we are, with so many nice devotees and so many opportunities, such a great facility to preach here in Utah. One of the most beautiful souls with whom we get to come into contact with regularly is Rakesh and his wife Bhavan and his 2 children. Jai, he's on the line with us right now. Good morning, Rakesh. Brent also is a joy to see out there soaking up the wisdom of the Bhagavat every Sunday. Brett is clearly an aspirant to be a servant. Brett is not at all in the mood of a master or dominator, very humble, divested himself of most material possessions. He has no aspire to exploit or dominate material nature, and so therefore he's an ideal candidate for devotional service. And Jean from Salt Lake City. There are 11 people currently online on our Facebook. Go ahead and make a comment. Tell us a Hare Krishna. Let us know you're here. Tell us where you're from. I think I successfully identified the residence, the country and the state and the city of residence of most of our participants today. So if you jump on and you let us know you're there, tell us your whereabouts so that we'll know moving forward. Thank you very much. It's been great being with you. Motivational Monday. Can't wait to join again 23 hours from today on Transcendental Tuesday. In the meantime, keep chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.